He's slick. The first question that we got to deal with when we're talking about these timing chains here is a roller style timing chain makes less noise than a flat link timing chain. Roller style would be like a bicycle timing chain or a bicycle chain style timing chain. Is it noisier or is it less noisy?
Noisier than flat link.
Okay, why if it's noisier, then why is it that we use roller timing chains on so many engines now? It'll be like a double roller timing chain. You'll see them on engines. They were using them on truck engines for years, and they started using them on some of your higher performance cars, you know, that had standard V8s with a camshaft in the block. What's the purpose in using a roller chain over a flat link chain if it's noisier? It doesn't stretch. The flat link chain stretches and gets slack in it. Whenever it gets slack in it, your cam timing gets late. Years ago, there was this guy that had a pickup truck. He wanted me to build him an engine, put in it. And so rather than take his truck out of service, I bought this, and this was a long, long time ago. There was this boy that had come from South Carolina that had a 70 model Ford that had a 360 in it. It was either a 360 or a 390, I can't remember. But anyway, I took that, because they're the same engine except one of them was bored and stroke. But I pulled that 390 out, or I actually started the 390 while it was still in that other car. I bought it the whole car from him for $25. And I started it up and I revved it up and it was real solid sounding engine. I said, that's pretty cool. So I got it out and I tore it all down. And the timing chain, all of the plastic was gone off of that aluminum cam timing gear. And the only thing that was left was the aluminum, which has a lot smaller teeth. And the fact that that thing didn't jump time when I was revving it up there beat all I ever seen. I could literally take the timing chain off with my fingers without taking the gear off. That's how loose it was. But it was somehow staying in time. But anyway, that's just something I remember about the timing chain. If a timing chain gets really stretched a lot, you're going to lose engine vacuum, and you're going to wind up with having to have some the timing chain and components replaced. And typically, something else that I would do, and a lot of people like the steel timing gears, on the older cars, I would put an aluminum gear with nylon teeth back on there because it's lighter and it doesn't stretch the chain as bad as the steel one. And so, but there's a reason why the steel one wasn't used from the factory. It was, even though it was a little more expensive, they still used the aluminum and plastic one because the chain didn't stretch quite as bad, and it was lighter and everything else. Okay, number 2, when a timing chain is used, fiber composite or composite plastic sprockets may be used.
True. That's
true. The first one was false, that one's true. Now, why do they use sprockets? In other words, even if you've got gears that are directly meshed with each other, do you remember why that was? Have I told you about this before? Remember how if you have steel gears or any kind of metal gears that are driving the chains, when you turn the camshaft, it has a tendency to, get soft, hard and easy, and those gears hammer real loud. They'll make a big noise. So they put some kind of fiber or plastic composite or something like that so that you don't have as much noise. That's basically how that works. Number 3, when timing has jumped, the compression will be low on all cylinders. Is that true or is that false? All right, now are they talking about, and this is one of the things I want to ask them about this question. I'd like to hit Elizabeth on email exchange here. When timing has jumped, the compression will be low on all cylinders. Does that mean it's a rubber timing belt has stripped and the camshaft is not moving at all and nothing is turning but the crankshaft? Or does that mean everything's like a tooth or two behind? Technically, it's right. That's a true answer. But what I'm saying is, a lot of the times you'll hear it where some cylinders have compression and some don't. But typically, none of them will usually have as much compression as they're supposed to have. That make any sense? All right. Okay, number 4, a valve timing problem can be suspected if a vacuum reading is lower than 18 to 22 inches of mercury at idle.
Great, that?
Huh?
Greg died?
He's in the hospital.
That really? I was joking, but just.
Yeah, you gotta be careful about that because sometimes he will have. You'll feel okay.
It stays whole.
I'm telling you, he's in bad shape. All right, but his wife called me this morning and told me he's in the hospital. So think about him, okay? All right. Mention his name when you go to the Kingdom Hall. Okay. All right. All right. Now then, we got number 4 is actually a Truby. That's true. Number 4 is true. That's valve timing problem can be suspected if a vacuum reading is lower than 18 to 22. That's not always what's wrong. Ignition timing, late ignition timing can be a problem, or late valve timing can be a problem, or EGR can be a problem. A vacuum leak is not going to cause you to have low engine vacuum, is it, Lawrence?
Yeah.
Well, a vacuum leak, that's typically on a fuel injected engine, it just makes the engine run faster usually, depending on where it is, right? And I had that one guy, remember that one Bronco I told you about? And it had a low engine vacuum, was running rich, and Donnie was working on it, it was beating him up. And I said, you got low engine vacuum, Donnie, think back. I said, look, think about what you got. You either got valve timing, you got ignition timing, or you got EGR. He said, well, I know the ignition timing's okay. Well, that's true. If the balancer hasn't slipped, the outside of the balancer is, mounted on a piece of rubber between it and the inside. And if it has slipped, the marks on the outside of that balancer can be out of line with where they're supposed to be. See what I mean? All right. So anyway, that was the foregone conclusion, though. With him, the balancer was good, the timing was set, but valve timing was late. Well, the camshaft was running behind the crankshaft because it had sheared the key on the crank pulley. You remember that story I told you about that?
Yeah.
All right, so he had late valve timing, not because of a timing chain issue. It was because the key that located the timing sprocket on the crankshaft had sheared, and the crankshaft had actually sheared that key and spun ahead of the cam. And it was still in time enough to run, but the low vacuum was causing the map sensor to read an engine load that wasn't there, and it was making it run rich. So he was actually he was applying extra vacuum to the map sensor to make it clean up his act and saying, why do I not have good vacuum here? And, he's kind of going around that. And he's a heavy-duty thinker. Let me tell you something. Sometimes when you're diagnosing something, it's better to talk to somebody than it is to try to figure it out by yourself. I'm not trying to ask them for all the information. Let me run this by you, after you've kind of exhausted your thought process. Now, I'm not talking about go trotting over to the next stall and ask the person for every answer you need. It's irritating. And now what I do is I go tell them, this is what I've got. I've got this, and I've got that, and I've got that. Now, when I've gone to Donnie or another real sharp engine, a diagnostician, sometimes it would work in the, few stalls away. Both of us talking about it can come up with an answer a lot of the times. When one of us by himself would have trouble.
Brainstorm.
Exactly, yeah. And Donnie would ask me about stuff, and I'd ask him about stuff. Sometimes he had the answer, sometimes I had the answer. We didn't know. Neither one of us was either above the other one. But his mind works a different way than mine does.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's going to gather a lot of information before he forms a conclusion. That's the way his mind works. And I have a tendency to jump to conclusions. I think kind of like JT. JT will make snap judgments, because he gets enough information where he feels like he's got all he needs, and I know what it is. And sometimes he's right. But like me, I have the same problem. Sometimes I actually am wrong because I made a judgment based on just a tiny little bit of information. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like in the way you write shows that. And Donnie would do that. He actually wanted to, if the TP sensor dropped out, he wanted to see it happen. He wanted to see it happen again. He wanted to rub his wires. He wanted to check the connectors and all that kind of stuff. I got a code for a TP sensor dropping out. I see it drop out one time. It's getting a sensor. Bam. I'm throwing it on the car, and that was done, and I'm out drawing the next job. Well, he's piddling with it longer to make sure. Somebody said he was lucky to write an essay about it or something. But anyway, that was Amanda met him when she went out there to talk to that. To talk to him about that Dodge we sent out to the programs.
Where's he work?
He's got a shop out there between here and Dothan on Base Ring Road. And he's been in business a lot. He's been working on cars since he was like 15 years old. He's real sharp, and he's probably 5 years younger than me. I think he's probably in his late 40s, but he's been working on cars for probably 30 years, and he's just real sharp. He knows a lot about a lot of things. And he tells a story good. He could write motor age articles if I could get him to write the way he talks. But anyway.
If you're recording, even write it for you.
Well, that's too much trouble. All right, now then, to prevent possible camshaft damage, excuse me, to prevent possible camshaft breakage, rotate the engine utilizing the crankshaft bolt. The crankshaft bolt is right there on the end of the crankshaft, right?
Yes.
If you're using a camshaft to turn the engine, that's okay, but it's really putting a lot of stress on a lot of things.
Stress chains and belts and crap.
Yeah, you're causing issues with that. It's really not good to use the camshaft to turn the engine.
Why'd you tell Hanscom that one time to turn the engine with an alternator?
Yeah, you can do that. That's not really hurting there.
Why'd you tell him to? That was weird. You could have just put the...
Sometimes the belt slips when you're trying to turn the engine with the alternator, but you can add a little pressure to it, make it. That's not hurting anything. But if you're using your camshaft to try to turn the engine, that's when you're playing with fire. Not a good thing. So 5 is true. Valve damage is possible on interference type and freewheeling engines when the timing mechanism breaks.
False.
Valve. Wait a minute.
Says freewheeling.
Wait a minute. Valve damage is possible on interference type and freewheeling engines when the timing breaks. In my mind, if it's a freewheeling engine, you're not typically going to have any issues, right?
No, you're not.
Okay, can you think of an engine off the top of your head that's got a rubber timing belt but will bend the valves if that timing belt jumps?
Honda Civic.
Honda Civic. What about a Mitsubishi Galant?
That
They
too.
do that too.
Or
Anything Mitsubishi made typically will bend the valves when the timing jumps.
Or a VW like the new GTIs.
The GTIs. Anything that's a diesel is going to, because you don't have any clearance there. Yeah, there's a lot of them that do that. The Ford Escort was doing it when it first came out, but they fixed it within a year, and they started fly cutting the pistons. I think, I say 82, 83.
The only thing cut a flat top and they cut them with an angle.
Well, whatever they take out, they got to put back to keep the compression the same. But they just change the shape of the top of the piston to do that.
Like valve release or something?
Huh?
Like valve release or something?
Yeah, there's actually, you can fly cut the piston so that the valves, or make it freewheeling and all that. But like I say, whatever you take out, if you take some something out of the top of the piston so the valve won't hit, you got to add something to take up what you took out, because you're going to have, it's going to affect your compression. Technician A says that when the timing mechanism fails, I would say 6 is false. The answer key says true, but I don't think I won't disagree with that. So I'm going to change the answer key, because I can do that because I'm the boss and the answer key's not.
Freewheeling engines, you can break a time belt all day long and just put it back in time, put it in time.
I know, and that's what we did. Technician A says when a timing mechanism fails on an interference type engine, the valves will contact the pistons, causing severe damage. Technician B says a freewheeling engine won't damage the engine if the timing chain mechanism fails.
True.
Okay, number 7. That's both of them. See, if 7 is correct, then 6 cannot be true. But the answer key said 6 was true, that was a boo-boo. And I didn't write these tests, by the way. The textbook publisher who wrote them.
You was writing the test, right?
Huh?
Last semester you was writing the test.
I write the test sometimes, and sometimes I get them out of the textbooks. When I write the test, they're always a better test.
The ones you write, they have switching it when you go to another chapter that indicate that, right?
Not necessarily. The ones that I actually put the test together using the test bank, and I told it which chapter it went to. Yeah. But I usually just write them for one chapter at a time anyway when I'm writing them. Technician A says the GM variable valve timing system eliminated the EGR valve. Technician B says to make sure the cam is timed correctly, align marks on the cam gear and crank gear. Who's correct? So let's talk about Technician A first. Variable valve timing system has the different variable valve timing systems have totally different purposes. Now on the Asian cars, like the one that JT and Tyler are putting a timing chain on, it's got variable cam timing on it.
Yeah, source power though.
Which crankshaft is it on?
It's on the exhaust or intake.
If it's on the intake camshaft, then it's going to increase horsepower. If it's on the exhaust camshaft, it eliminates EGR.
That way,
You won't typically have it. You won't usually have it on both.
we'll close the valve early and keep the exhaust gas in there.
Yeah, it closes the valve early, leaves some exhaust gas there, so you don't have to recirculate it. And on the other ones, it's like the hot rodders have been degreeing camshaft for years to give them more power. This thing degrees it dynamically while you're driving. The Toyota Camry does that. the newer ones with the chains on them, and the Toyota. And you won't typically, well, I started to say something that was patently false. You can have variable cam timing even on cars with a timing belt instead of chain.
Yeah, mine did.
Yeah, so, it's not a, you can't categorically say you won't have it if you got a timing belt.
Mine has weird cam timing.
The first variable cam timing vehicle that I came out that I know anything about was the Ford Contour, and that was to eliminate EGR. And that was a Mazda design, basically is what that was, and it was Asian. Let's go down to 9. I'm sorry. Technician B says to make sure the cam is timed correctly, align the marks on the cam gear and crank gear. That's number 8. Well, align them with what? That's a question I have right there.
A mark on the block and a mark on the gear.
Yeah, or a mark on or colored links on the chain.
That works too.
Yeah, that's right. So anything that you do. As a matter of fact, occasionally you'll see one that'll have yellow paint marks on the belt.
Yeah.
You've seen those before? That's pretty cool. Number 9. Technician A says the camshaft or valve timing is usually established with cylinder. So I'm sorry, 8 is C. Number 9, yeah, 8C. Technician A says the camshaft or valve timing is usually established with a cylinder number 1 at top dead center on the exhaust stroke. Technician B says a timing belt is frequently used on overhead cam engines. Who's correct? Yep. No, wait a minute. Technician A says camshaft or valve timing is usually established with cylinder number 1 at TDC on the exhaust stroke. Oh, yeah, that's a B there. That's not on the exhaust stroke. Don't want to crash and burn on that. You got to watch those answers. Okay, technician A explained to the customer that a timing chain that is making noise should be changed to avoid failure and a costly repair bill. There's that little blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl with dimples that came in here, and we were doing something to her little SUV. I don't even remember what kind of SUV it was. But I told her, I said, this thing's supposed to have a timing belt put on it at 100,000. You got 110, and I hear the timing belt slapping the cover.
Christina?
No, what's her name? I can't remember her girl. Anyway, she's a pretty girl, but she came over and she says, I said, I can get a timing belt for $40. I can have somebody change it next week. And she said, okay. Well, she just never got around to coming back.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I'm telling you, you're going to have issues if that timing belt breaks. This one is going to bend the valves. And I knew that one would somehow. I can't remember what kind of car it was or what kind of SUV it was. And next time I saw her was about 2 or 3 months later. And she said, I was turning into Walmart. My timing belt jumped and bent all my valves.
Yeah, she called me. She was like, what happened? I'm like, it broke.
Yeah. And it bent every valve in the thing. I mean, and it was, but anyway, that was, she said it cost her $1,500 to get it fixed. And we could have fixed it, we could have put a timing belt on it for $40.
And then it overheated again and blew up again.
Yeah, she wasn't paying attention when I told her that, or didn't attach any significance to what I was trying to tell her. But anyway, the technician B explained to the customer that the reduced low-end performance is unlikely to be noticed before timing gears break from excessive backlash. Backlash meaning they're bouncing, So you got the noise because of their bouncing and everything else. So 10 is going to be C. Both those guys are right. If you got a noisy chain, you need to take care of that. And it's going
my chain, making that noise one time and it went out. It went out.
Did that ruin your whole day?
No.
Is your air conditioner still cooling?
Oh yeah, it's cool.
You that night? So you feel good coming to work today?
Oh yeah.
You had to wear the do-rag to keep your head warm, didn't you? All right then.
It should be more like specific though on number 10. The timing chain making noise because it's always going to make noise.
Well, some of them make noise more than others, but chains like flat link timing chains aren't as noisy as a roller timing chain. Number 10. Technician A says when the valve timing mechanism has jump time, the cylinder compression will not be affected.
What?
Wrong. When the valve timing mechanism has jump time, the cylinder compression will not be affected. What planet are they on? Technician B says a cranking vacuum test will. I don't know who some of the Technician A and Technician B, they can't be using the same two technicians because one of these guys sometimes is a buffoon. Has no idea what he's talking about. Technician B says the cranking vacuum test will indicate a broken timing mechanism. How much cranking vacuum should you have on a healthy engine? If you're just spinning the engine over, With your vacuum gauge attached, what should you see?
18 to 22 inches.
No, I mean if you're just spinning it over, not running now. Not going to be as high when you're spinning it as it is when it's running.
Like
Oh.
16, 17.
No, you're supposed to have like 2 to 4 inches
4?
typically. It's very small vacuum when you're spinning it because it ain't going very fast.
Oh, vacuum. I'm
Yeah.
thinking compression.
No, vacuum. Oh, what, 16, you know?
Because, you know,
Where'd you get 16 for compression?
because the little compression gauge goes to 20.
That's
You think
not
about
very
vacuum.
I used the wrong gauge, didn't I?
Yeah, in your mind. That's all right. You do better than that. I'm letting y'all focus on it. Yeah. See, he does what I do. I jump to conclusions and say stuff sometimes that doesn't make any sense at all. Don't I? I've done that in here, haven't I? All right. I mean, I'll say stuff and I'll think, what was I thinking when I said that, you know?
It's
All right.
okay.
I tell you what's worse is when you say something, when you write something without thinking, the editors don't catch it in the magazine. It goes in print, makes you look like an idiot. You know, I had that happen one time. It never happened again. All right, and it had to do with the number of milliamps. It wasn't supposed to. I put something like millivolts instead of milliamps. You know, nobody caught it. All right, a camshaft that is off as little as one tooth can cause A, emission levels to decrease, B, emission levels to rise, C, a whining or whirring noise, or D, the camshaft to break.
What was 11?
Did we miss 11?
We did the question, but we never really got to.
Sorry about that. B is the right one on 11. The crank and vacuum test will indicate broken valve timing mechanism. Camshaft that's off as little as one tooth can cause 12 emission levels to rise. But what is it that can cause a timing belt to whir or whine?
If it's getting old.
No. What? A whirring and whining timing belt. No.
Hold too tight.
Too tight.
Yeah.
But some of them are worse than others. Hey, I thought I smelled something. There's uniform man. Did you check my patches really good? Because one of these was coming off of this shoulder. Make sure they're all good. We have to have patches because these are our credentials, right?
I'm going to get Mr. Richard a bunch of very small boy patches.
Oh, how sweet.
Have them out.
You can get those made off of Zippo. I will sew it on my shirt there for a little bit, and then I tear it off until you left. All right. They cost a lot, though.
Yeah, if you break something, you want to.
Well, just like I told you, when you're not bothered by people being called a very small boy, then you're not a very small boy anymore. As long as it bothers you, you're still a very small boy. I backed him in a corner with that, didn't I? Okay, now so a whining, or what I started to say was, if you've got, how many of you notice these timing chains and these timing belts? Some of them have got teeth that look like this, right? And some of them have got, and that's what the timing belt looks like. And some of them have got teeth that look like this.
They were crappy.
Yeah, and but I mean the ones that have the square teeth, if I remember right, are the ones that whine the worst. Now, when I was working at the Ford dealership, we would have Ford Escorts that would come in there, and if you watch the tachometer, now these had a distributor on them on the end of the camshaft. If you watch the tachometer, it would go boom, 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 boom. It would bounce. And for a while, we were scratching our heads trying to figure out what in a Sam Hill this was, because I was seeing a lot of these things doing this.
Looks like a skip.
And it would skip a little and cut up and all that. And I put a distributor in like a rebuilt distributor, and it would stop that. And so I said, well, there's something going on in the distributor. It must be with a pickup coil or something. I worried with that thing for a while and beat it up. And then, lo and behold, I ran across one that even when I put a distributor on there, it still did it. And I went, oh, what's up with this? And you know what I found on those? This stupid timing belt was loose. It's on the other end of the engine, right? But I mean, the loose timing belt was causing the distributor to move around. So when I tightened the timing belt a little, all that skipping would go away. And I probably put 3 or 4 distributors on before I recognized the fact that the timing belt was loose. And I had a booger of a time convincing my shop foreman that the loose timing belt was causing that skipping. But it was related to the fact that the distributor was on the opposite end of the camshaft. Got that? I mean, that's, a lot of times you think you know more than you do.
Yeah.
Something comes in like that, and you're sitting here beating your head against the wall and all that.
You know what Honda did? I called Honda when I built that motor for them. They told me never run. I called them, and it was doing that. It hold like $3 grand. It do that. I'm like, what's going on here? Anyway, I changed all the spark plugs, changed all the wires, changed my cap rotor, all that stuff. Put it back in time. And Honda told me to tighten my belt to this specification. So I did.
Tighten the timing belt?
Yeah. It was like, do it again. Like, what's going on? I never figured it out.
Yeah.
Lie to me.
Yeah. Well, those stories are fun until you get to the point you find out that you didn't have closure, and that just really wears me out. I thought we were going to find out something, but I mean, I've been there. You get beat up. That one guy that used to run that parts house down there, they had a shop in the back and did a lot of work. I mean, he's a good mechanic. He knew a lot of stuff, and he had a little old car of some kind that was overheating. And he worried with that thing, worried with it, and he put this on it and that on it, and he checked this and the thermostat and all. He just worried and worried and worried with it. And this guy's a sharp mechanic. He really, really knows a lot. And he took it to this old man over there on the other side of town, and he goes, this thing is beating me up. And he said, I cannot figure out why it's overheating. And the guy says, leave it here and come back in about 20 minutes, and it'll be fine. And he says, so he left and come back about 20 minutes later, and he said the car ran cool as a cucumber. And he said he never did find out what that old man did. To fix that car. I wouldn't tell him. But he said, that is how, you could even mention that. You could see his eyes light up, But occasionally somebody's keeping their knowledge to themselves. I tend to share all of mine. I always have. I tell everybody everything I know, just whatever. Even when I was working in a shop. Okay, number 13. On inspection, the technician discovered that the cam belt is adjusted too tightly, and that could result in what? See, we didn't even talk about noise. I mean, the whining noise. Could it be engine bearing damage, water pump bearing damage, timing belt to snap, or higher CO level? The cam belt is adjusted too tightly. And what did you say?
D.
D or B?
Dog.
Oh, dog. Now, how is a cam belt adjusted too tightly going to cause higher CO levels?
It's not.
I can't understand how that would happen. Well, see, I'm not tearing them down because the stupid answer key says D, but I cannot rectify that in my mind. How in a Sam Hill can a timing belt that's too tight cause higher CO? What causes higher CO levels? Usually. Did you see that truck out there that we had the exhaust gas analyzer hooked up to?
Yeah.
All right. What did you see on that?
When
Well, we disconnected a coil and it stopped firing. The hydrocarbons went up and the CO went up as well, right? So if you've got an engine that's running a little bit too rich, you're going to have CO issues, but you're also going to have hydrocarbons. In other words, if you've got incomplete combustion, you got CO. That's the way that works. But D is not the right answer for that. I'm sorry. But if it's too tight, timing belt can break. If you got a water pump that's being driven by the timing belt, you could damage that. And it's technically you could damage the engine bearings. So actually D would be the right answer, but only if it was all of the above, right? Or any of the above, right?
It says except.
Yeah, this could result in all the following problems except.
I'm sorry, say that again.
This could result in all the following problems except.
Oh, I'm sorry, D. So that's why y'all are saying D. No problem. I would say, okay, so that makes sense. Let's see. Very good. Yeah, I missed the except. That's one of the ways that you crash and burn on an ASC test is you don't see the word except. They're really careful about it, though. How did I miss that? I was going to read the question. Duh. All right. Okay. Now then, under light engine loads, the PCM does what to the valve timing to reduce overlap and maintain stable engine operation on a vehicle that has a VVT system? Does it? Anybody got a good answer for that? He said it retards it. Is that right? Anybody know? Think about it.
Adds timing. Doesn't retard it.
Under light engine loads. Yeah, it's going to advance it when it's loaded heavy, isn't it?
Oh, when it was loaded heavy, you couldn't advance it. So
Well, yeah, it's actually retarding it, like you said, to reduce overlap and maintain engine. A timing blank is frequently used on overhead cam engines.
Nope.
Yes. Now, let me ask you this. What makes the timing, what?
I said no. She said change. Said yes.
Yes, whatever.
belt, right?
What's the best thing about, well, either one could be right? Think about it. A timing blank is frequently used on overhead camshaft engines. Give me a break. You know, could it be a belt or chain, right?
I put belt / chain.
Yeah, belt or chain.
That's what I need.
I mean, that's a badly worded fill in the blank question. Because if I put chain, am I wrong? No. If I put belt, am I wrong? No. Because they're both frequently used. Duh. Well, why is it? Let me ask you this: if you were designing an engine from the ground up, okay, let's say you're designing an engine from the ground up, would it be less trouble to design an engine with a chain or a belt?
Depends on how easy it is to take it off.
No, I'm not talking about how easy it is to work on. How easy is it? I mean, what do you have to do if you're going to have a chain? I'm going to have to enclose that chain in an all, sealed cover, and I'm going to have to lubricate that sucker. I'm going to have splash oil. I'm probably going to have a timing chain tensioner that's driven by oil and all this hogwash. I'm going to have these long slides. I mean, there's a heck of a lot of hardware on chains that you don't have to have on a belt. On a belt, I'm going to poke a shaft out the engine of the engine with a seal around it. I'm going to poke a shaft out the end of the engine with a seal on it for the crank and the cam. I'm going to pop some sprockets on there. And I'm going to put a spring-loaded tensioner, and I got me a rubber belt with a spring-loaded tensioner. Heck, I can drive the water pump with it if I want to, but I don't have to. I drive the water pump with a regular belt. See how easy it is to build an engine with a timing belt on it? It's quieter, it's easier, and if you build it to be free spinning, you're virtually, like I say, those little Kia Cephias and stuff, if one of those jumps time, you're going to have an engine that's like many thousands of dollars, But on the ones, if you build a free spinning engine, it's a whole lot easier to build an engine from an engineering standpoint. It's cheaper and easier to build it with a belt than it is a stupid chain, which is all there is to that. I mean, I can understand why they went with timing belts.
How many chains you have to change as often?
Huh?
How many chains you have to change as often?
You don't hardly ever have to change it.
On the Nissan Maxima, like the older one, like a 95, 97 model, they don't ever call it change timing belt or timing chain.
Pretty fast cars, too.
Well, you don't. I mean, that little motor you're working on out there, you don't ever need to do the timing chain on that unless you have to pull the head off.
That's why I set mine in grease.
Yeah. And he soaked that thing in engine oil for days.
So we can get all rusty, because they rust really good.
Yeah, they do pretty. If you've dried them off. All right, now then, where are we at on this thing? Number 17. The timing chain blank should be replaced during a high mileage timing chain replacement.
Sprocket.
Sensor.
What? Guides? What about the guides? You know these long curved nylon lined guides? You need to replace those if you got high mileage on there. Because they wear off.
You say guys, Amanda?
No, it says sprocket.
So it's wrong. Okay.
Number 17. When there's slack in the timing chain, the camshaft timing is behind the crank and thus does what to the valve timing? If the camshaft is running late, then the valve timing is retarded.
Just like me.
You taking a shot.
Missing or broken cogs or teeth on the underside of a timing blank indicates immediate need of replacement. Dictates immediate replacement. I'll tell you something else. Let me say something. Well, that's actually belts right after that. Let me tell you something else. I had some students, and this is plumb stupid, but we had this little black, it was a little Chevrolet, and it had a Toyota engine in it. And what is the gear made out of, the timing gear?
On a Toyota motor?
On just about any. I'm talking about the cam timing gear. What's it made of?
Composite.
Oh, no. I go with,
You ever tap one? It's like a pump. It ain't really a team.
Yeah, it's composite. Well, he said composite. It's pewter, which is cast, which is easy to break. All right. So one day, we're working on the computer science instructor's daughter's car, and it was a little Chevrolet with a Toyota engine in it. I can't remember for the life of me. It's some kind of a Geo or something. And you know what they did with that thing? Y'all quit playing with your cell phones. You know what they did with that thing? These guys, and this is important, I'm going to tell you this so that you won't screw up and make the mistake they did. It's got spokes, right? The timing gear does?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were going to try to break the bolt loose to break the timing, to take the gear off. Mm-hmm. Okay, they wanted to hold the camshaft still, so they stuck a screwdriver through the spokes on the timing gear at a sort of an angle, and they were trying to break the bolt loose, and they broke the timing gear.
bolt up on.
And the timing gear was destroyed, And now the car is just about a boat weight. You know why? You couldn't get a gear. So it was a 94 model.
Had to buy it.
So I called the Chevrolet place, and he scours the countryside because this is considered an obsolete part. And there's one dealership somewhere. I don't know where it's at. This is during whenever GM was being bought out by the federal government. Doing this bankruptcy thing. But anyway, he found one gear, $36 for that one gear. Couldn't get the dealership that had the thing to sell it to him. They wouldn't sell it. GM called him. General Motors called him and said he needs this gear to get this car back on the road. They would not sell it.
It's a good person.
Well, I got to thinking about that. There's a Toyota engine over here that was, just like it, that came out of that was given to me by the Toyota T10 program. And so I had to rob the gear off of that one to get the Toyota. To get that little car going, because it was exactly the same gear, you see. And I never did get Donald over there to get me a gear. He could never, ever get me a gear. And he just kind of quit worrying about it and all that. But anyway, that was aggravating as all get out. Now, Toyota, I might have been able to get one from. All right. Well, I wouldn't have been able to get a Honda gear to fit that Toyota motor. Forget that. Well, that sounds good, but it didn't wash on this job here. Okay, I wanted to tell you that. Listen to the words to the wise here. You don't stick something through the spokes of that timing gear to hold it still while you're loosening hold it some other kind of way. The last thing you don't want to do is, you don't want to hear the words that JT says is sometimes, I broke it. You got a torque wrench this long, even if it is digital, and they think you got it set on small inch poundage, and if it's this long, pop.
How does it small inch poundage?
Oh, I don't know, but it's too long for a little bolt like you were tightening. That's what we got. Don't do that. Valve timing on a dual overhead cam engine is correct if the sprocket keyway is at the what position? What sprocket keyway? What are they saying? What engine are they talking about? All dual overhead cam engines?
No, I guess.
Which, all right, now, let me ask you this. What's the 12 o'clock position on this 2.2 liter Camry engine?
So 2.2 Camry.
The one we got on that stand out there. What's the 12 o'clock position?
I thought they were.
Oh, well, look at this. 12 o'clock position, typically, you're going to say, how is that engine laid in there? At an angle about like that, right? All right, so what that means is I need to have the keyway sprocket here.
No. It's like at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Well, here.
Should be.
Is that always the way it is?
No.
No, it's not. It's a bad question. It's not always like that. Sometimes you'll have that thing somewhere else besides 12 o'clock. Typically, the keyway is at the 12 o'clock position when the number one cylinder is all the way to the top.
That one's 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's on the bottom. I hope you're right.
I am right.
Yeah, because pistons are all the way up. So what you're saying is the Nissan Altima that you're working on out there, the keyway is on the 6 o'clock position when the piston's at the, top dead center.
Because you can set the head off, you can set the piston as long as...
All you can do is look down there with your flashlight.
I put one of the long extensions down there.
Yeah.
And when it got to the top, it was like move down, move just.
Yeah, you found the top dead center that way. All right, number 20, to prevent possible, well, number 19 is supposed to be, say, 12 o'clock, but that's not always true. To prevent possible timing mechanism damage, the engine should be rotated in the blank direction of rotation. Normal direction. Don't turn it backwards, y'all. If you can help it, do not turn it backwards. It's not a good thing to do. Okay, now, does everybody know something they didn't know before?
Yes.